Sat Shri Akal. My name is Neeraj Juneja, and on behalf of the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce's San Francisco Bay Area chapter, I'm excited to welcome you all to what we promise will be a very interesting and useful conversation. Before we do get started, I'd like to congratulate Indians everywhere on celebrating our 75th Independence Day on August the 15th. It's a huge milestone. I sometimes forget that we are still a relatively young country, the world's largest democracy. So congratulations. Quick logistics. If you have any questions as we go through the webinar, please submit them in the Q&A box, preferably not in the chat, in the Q&A box, and we'll take them up towards the end during the Q&A session. A quick second here. We are fortunate to have two amazing guests with us today who will shed some light on the increasing threat of cyber attacks and how to best protect against them. Jack Kudale, who's the founder and CEO of Cowbell Cyber. It's one of the most exciting and fastest growing insurtech startups right now. And we're also very fortunate to have Elvis Chan, who's Assistant Special Agent in charge, and he heads up the cyber branch of FBI's San Francisco division, which I believe is the second largest in the country. So, gentlemen, thank you for making time to be on the program with us, and we're looking forward to a great conversation. We will basically start with, I'll share a little bit about what the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce is about, and what businesses and professionals can gain by becoming a member of the PCC, and how you can get involved in our mission. After the speaker's introduction, we'll talk about what the cyber threat landscape looks like and how it's rapidly evolving. And then we'll dive deep into what you can do to avoid being a victim of a cyber incident, what to do if you do get targeted, and how do you recover from it? Before we dive into it, a little bit about myself. I'm a numbers guy, have been in the technology industry previously, and now in the property casualty space. I consider myself a finance and an insurance geek, and I'm not ashamed to say that. And I've been with small, medium, and large companies through my career, and I'm really proud to be a member of the Punjabi Chamber of Commerce as well. The San Francisco Bay Area chapter is relatively new. We started just a few months back, and I'm also on the board as well as a few of the global governing committees as well. And in my spare time, I'm a woodworker, a DIYer, and I just enjoy building stuff, which is why I am part of a startup as well. A little bit about Punjabi Chamber of Commerce. We are a nonprofit organization, and we are devoted to the interests of professionals and businesses. We are about 4 years into our journey now. And as I mentioned, specifically the San Francisco Bay Area chapter is relatively new. I like to think of ourselves as a startup as well. So we're still going through the same pains in terms of scaling and processes and all the good stuff that goes along with that. We're completely free, so anybody can become a member, and we are dedicated to community building, community protection, and that's really where our two speakers on the topic today comes in, is how do we better protect our stakeholders, our customers, and obviously the broader community and our members as well. When I look at the strict no religion, no politics policy, I actually think about the opposite. I think of all religions and all politics. So we are very inclusive. We do not restrict membership to any specific ethnic group, background, etc. Anybody is welcome to join. It's really easy to sign up for PCC. If you haven't been noticing down at the bottom, just go to the punjabichamber.com or scan that QR code, and you'll go to our website and you can sign up. I'm really proud of our charity arm of the Punjabi Chamber. We raised over $100,000, and especially during the peak of the COVID pandemic in India. We did yeoman's work in helping save lives, and that's what draws me to the Punjabi Chamber as well. That we are out to do good. As you can see, we are looking to raise or set up 2 oxygen plants, so just supplying oxygen cylinders. And we have an eye strongly towards the future as well, which is why we have a fairly vibrant youth wing, which is a global youth squad. And they're doing great outreach and webinars everywhere. So why join the chamber? I'll just highlight a few points here. The networking just jumps out to me. We have some phenomenal members already, and all over the world. So it's not just the Bay Area, it's not just the US. We are in 5-7 countries now, everywhere, and that affords every single member the opportunity to network with anybody in our group. We also, advocate on behalf of our members as needed, and by becoming a member, you actually have a chance to give back to the community as well. And we have exclusive discounts, etc., for our members. And as I mentioned, all of this is free. So we are a not-for-profit. We work, with donations, but there is no membership fee. How you can get involved? We need, or we are looking for assistance at every level. Whether at the leadership level, across all community leadership, and volunteers as well. So, I encourage you to join up, and we have, certainly for the Bay Area, we have a ton of similar value-added webinars that you can actually get really helpful information about to help you in your business and your careers as well. I'll invite our speakers to introduce themselves. Jack, if you would like to share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Neeraj, and it's such a pleasure to be here, being part of PCC, and also being able to speak to one of the most talked about topic today. Just like many of you, I have immigrated from India in my 20s. Since then, building businesses. I'm an engineer, turned a product manager, turned a sales exec, turned a CEO, turned an entrepreneur. About 2 years ago, we built, along with my partners, we built Cowbell Cyber, a cyber insurance provider focused on small to medium-sized businesses. And as you can imagine, still today, over 80% of small to medium-sized businesses are uninsured when it comes to cyber threats and cyber attacks, especially in a evolving and rapidly increasing threat landscape that we see today. So fast forward today, we are one of the fastest growing cyber insurers dedicated to the SMB focus, and have really gained the momentum and the name in the marketplace, not only as the fastest growing cyber insurer, but a partner for businesses to really help them navigate through this evolving threat landscape, and using cyber insurance as a tool, not the solution against the cyber threats and attacks. So I'm really happy to be here, especially in the company of Elvis, and looking forward to a great conversation here, Neeraj. So thank you, and I will give forum back to you and Elvis for introduction.
Thanks, Jack. What Jack didn't mention, by the way, he also has the unenviable task of managing me. He's my direct manager. Elvis, over to you.
Thanks, Neeraj. So Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm Elvis Chan. I run the cyber program for FBI San Francisco. It is the second largest cyber program behind FBI New York. And as you can imagine why, we're very busy. The way it works in the FBI is that wherever companies are headquartered, that is the FBI field office in charge of working with them and managing breaches. So as you know, we have the Silicon Valley here. The FBI has been the lead office for what was originally the FireEye hack that turned into the SolarWinds breach. We are also the lead office for DarkSide ransomware variant, as well as Hello Kitty ransomware variant, both of which have hit companies both here in our area as well as all over the nation. So as you can imagine, I've been very busy since COVID started. People ask me, oh, has like ransomware really blossomed this year? And I was like, no, I think it really started last year. Right around the March timeframe when we were locking down and people were starting to work remotely. The thing was, I think we were a little bit lucky last year, whereas the types of companies that were hit wouldn't draw as much media scrutiny. To be honest, and no offense to Colonial Pipeline, I had never heard of them until I realized that they control 40% of the oil distribution on the East Coast. Things like that, or Kaseya, how important they are, or SolarWinds. FBI, a lot of U.S. government agencies use SolarWinds products. So these are all supply chain issues that I know we're going to be diving into in this conversation. So I really appreciate being invited. I am actually, my parents immigrated from China. I'm the first generation born here, first person in my family to go to college. So I think my experience mirrors a lot of the experiences of the people who are attending this meeting, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
That's great. Gentlemen, thank you again. I couldn't be happier to have you both in our conversation today. So let's jump right in and to start with the threat landscape at a higher level. When we talk about cyber attacks, it's usually the ransomware that comes to mind, and we've had some biggies. Elvis, you alluded to some of them. I mean, there is SolarWinds, there's JBS Foods, Colonial Pipeline, Kaseya, Tokyo Marine more recently. And then, of course, T-Mobile, we just, 50 million records suddenly. So, CNA Insurance, there doesn't seem to be any company that is immune to certainly the ransomware. But what I thought would be interesting to start with is what other threats and cyber attacks are out there. So, Jack, if I could start with you. Could you share, what kinds of other cyber attacks do companies endure or come across that don't get as much of media attention?
Yeah, great question. And ransomware is like the popular kid in the cyber attack family because it's been in the news. And it may not stay there for too long. Supply chain is rapidly emerging. And more importantly, it could be very lethal. And we probably saw it in a Kaseya attack, is the combination of the supply chain and ransomware that is very deadly. But let's go back to, before ransom demands, just plain old data breach. It has been around there for a long time. Businesses are digitally transformed to a greater degree these days. And you have everything from just a simple cyber crime, such as social engineering, whether someone just happens to click on a malicious file or respond to an email, or you call invoice manipulation, the fund transfer fraud, and you still continue to see a greater degree of people just sending funds to wrong accounts because they tend to believe that they're sending it to right individual. And then you have other kind of regulatory fines is a big type of expense that you can see because you have an amazing data exposure for a business. And you can go on. This is a long list of whether you missed a bid as part of a business operations because of cyber attack, or your contractual damages because of some sort of cyber threat, or even as complex as bodily injury because the machines wouldn't work, or machines worked or there's malfunction. So there is a variety of types of cyber attacks beyond ransomware. And also, I know at some point we'll double click into ransomware. It's not just about ransom demand, if you will. So yes, the damages that can occur and the threat is much bigger and broader and deeper than ransomware alone, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, thank you. Elvis, same question. What kind of things does the FBI and you get involved in?
So I definitely want to emphasize what Jack said. Pretty much what's been the number one form of cyber fraud is business email compromise, right? That's the term of art that we're using, where Jack described someone gets sent an email. It doesn't even necessarily have to have a link or an attachment. It's just using social engineering to convince someone to wire money to an account controlled by bad people, or to give up their information, like their username, their password, their social security number, other personal identifying information. That, as of last year, was still the number one source of fraud within the United States. I think this year ransomware ties it or maybe surpasses it, just because there have been some really large ransoms, being taken, but business email compromises was still the number one thing. And it's really an easy fix, right? Because we talk about two-factor authentication for being able to access your email or your corporate network. I would say we can use two-factor authentication for financial transactions, right? Even if you are a small or medium-sized business. If you get an email from what looks like Jack, right, from his personal Gmail account instead of his Cowbell work account, you should feel comfortable. And Jack, this email says, hey, I need you to wire money to Bangladesh. I need you to wire $7 million to Bangladesh. That's a little weird, right? From Jack's personal email. You should feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling Jack and say, hey, Jack, did you really want me to wire the $7 million to Bangladesh? And he'll say, I have no idea what you're talking about. He says, well, I got an email from you. It's like, I would only send you from my work email, right? Just a second factor authentication would take care of that. So that's one threat. These are criminal threats. The other thing where the FBI gets involved in is national security threats, right? So there are 4 countries that we typically talk about: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And so lots of the companies that you insure for, lots of the companies who, all of the attendees are representing, are probably being targeted by these nation states as well. And they're probably wondering, why would I be targeted? And the reason is you're probably a part of the supply chain for larger companies, right? Like, you're proud when you're a US government contractor or when you're a provider for a Fortune 500 company. They may be looking at small to medium-sized businesses as easier vectors to get into the larger companies and in order to steal data, right? You look at an Equifax, right? That's a large company, but they got hacked by the Chinese, right? You look at Office of Personnel and Management, right? In the US government, they got hacked by the Chinese, right? You look at Yahoo, got hacked by the Russians, right? So all of these countries are looking to hack into different types of organizations in order to steal information to further their own national security interests, which typically hurts US national security interests.
Got it. Yeah, we typically don't, certainly from Cowbell's standpoint, don't think about the national interest stuff. So it's always great to put that into perspective. So while you have the floor, Elvis, how has the cyber threat landscape, changed over the past year or two? And obviously, cybercrime has been around for a while, but clearly something has shifted. So from your vantage point, if you could share, what's changed and why do you think that has changed?
So thank you. I think there are 2 things that have changed, and I kind of alluded to it. Starting in March of last year, most of the white-collar workforce switched to telework, right? So when you're working at your business, you typically have better cybersecurity, right? You have companies that have firewalls and antivirus and all of that. when you're working at home, it's you on your wireless router that you're sharing with your teenage kids and maybe your grandmother, and who knows what they're clicking on, right? So in general, if companies aren't careful, if they don't take safety protocols to ensure, like secure connection from an employee's home network to their corporate network, you could be in for a lot of trouble. So that's one thing, remote telework. The number two thing is, we'll go back to ransomware again. In the old days, ransomware crews, they're organized crime groups, right? They're like Russian mafia groups and Chinese mafia groups. They have to develop the software, they have to distribute it, they have to test it. There are money mules, there's there's money laundering, there's all of these different aspects that used to be involved in ransomware. It has now, I hate to say it, democratized. So now there's the thing called ransomware as a service. So if you're familiar with fast food chains, like they will franchise out, they will give you everything you need, right? Like you just pay a franchise fee and they give you a control panel that does all of the things that I just told you. It has already developed the ransomware for you. It will go and start scanning for vulnerable networks. It will give you a messaging system to be able to use. And so now, I hate to say it, but a 16-year-old working in his mother's basement can scrounge up money to pay the franchise fee and then become a ransomware attacker. And that's why I think it has really exploded, is a lot of the hackers that we're seeing right now are in their late teens, early 20s, and they don't have the same type of technical capabilities that we've seen in the past.
Got it. Jack, anything you'd like to add to that in terms of the changing nature of cyber
I
threat?
think Elvis really hit the home run on that. The only thing I would add is the linchpin between the number one and number two that he described is how the businesses have transformed since the March of last year to support all of this remote work and working from home and accommodating the personal and the work devices into a single thing. The businesses had to rapidly move to a cloud system, or kind of think about the digitization of the business has really accelerated over the pandemic. And what that has done is, what used to be a controlled environment for a business before, the attack surface now has exponentially increased, making it really easy for these threat actors in Elvis's world, the mafias, the cyber mafias out there, the criminals. Now their market opportunity has grown significantly because the attack surface is really become bigger. And that has really driven the combination of these 1, 2, 3 things has really driven the surge in the ransomware, and just overall threat landscape had just shot up to the moon since the pandemic has really began. And even though everyone's now going back to office, is starting to perhaps more hybrid, it's the new normal. It is not going to be anything like what used to be before. So think about this type of threat landscape is now the level, it's the foundation, it's the new normal, it's the baseline going forward, and it's only going to increase. So not to scare anyone with how big of a threat landscape, it is increasing. We've seen it in front of our eyes for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I know, Jack, you refer to it as a digital pandemic, right? So, so let's kind of dive a little deeper. And Jack, I'll just paint a not so much hypothetical scenario. One of Cowbell's policyholders walks into the office, fires up their laptop, and sees the screen. All your files and documents were encrypted. Pay $1 million in Bitcoin, or they'll be deleted, or they'll be shared publicly, or words to that effect. Everybody else in their office has the same thing. Nobody can access the computers. What do you suggest they do when that thing first happens?
Yeah, and I would speak to policyholder or non-policyholders. When something like that happens, it is a very stressful situation. First of all, many people have not, for many, it is the first time they are experiencing something like that. Second, you're trying to simply run your business. And possibly for many, it's the first time in their lifetime ransom has been demanded. And second, many people don't know what to do next. We heard about Bitcoin. Everyone has heard about Bitcoin, but demand for 10 Bitcoins or 5 Bitcoin, what does that mean? How do I even get to it? And so you have all kinds of questions. Now, if you have a cyber insurance policy, and I know we're going to talk about, what is cyber insurance, but as you know, cybersecurity life cycle, it's about prevention and detection, right? How do we in the first place prevent something bad from happening? Well, if something bad is happening, because it happens, even though you try to prevent it because threat landscape is increasing, how do you detect that? But the next thing is, okay, even though you can detect it, but it still happened Friday afternoon, 5:30 p.m., I get an email. It may not be, I'm opening my computer first time in the morning. It could be late in the afternoon. What do I do next? Whether someone's claiming that they have all my data, it may not be actual ransom. It could just be an extortion event. I think first and foremost is, call the hotline, the ransomware hotline, because this is when you need the help. In terms of being able to talk to a breach coach, say, okay, what do I next? Do I shut down my systems? Do I do something? Do I respond to the email? Like all those things, and it varies in every single situation. I'm sure Elvis can elaborate on some of the first steps, but we would take the ransomware hotline call. It's 24/7. Assign a breach coach so that first and foremost, you got to just take a step back, because in stressful situations, you can make decisions that could, in fact, increase the expenses incurred in that event. So just like any criminal event, first 24 hours are very critical in being able to respond to that event and then plan for recovery. Then you have forensic expert negotiators who can actually talk to the threat actors in certain ways, certain methods, certain channel. Most of these threat actors are reputed. That means their next action. That means if they say something, would they actually do, even after taking those ransom payments from you? Would they actually release your data? Would they actually promise not to publish that data? First and foremost, you get help from somebody and not try to act like a hero, which could actually help you minimize not only the expenses for that event, but be able to get you back into the business. The goal when the ransom event happens, the goal is how fast and securely and safely you can get back into the business. We have seen many businesses that do not get back after the ransom event because the expenses are too many, business interruption is way too hard and longer, and then you could be facing a very severe consequences financially because of the ransom event was not handled right. So I would just maybe give it back to you, Elvis, to see what you think victims should be doing in the case of ransom event, 5:30 p.m. Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Jack said, and he did not pay me to say that. Yeah. So the thing I also want to emphasize, like you said, is you were not planning for this, but the good news is hopefully none of you have been hit by a ransomware attack. You should have an incident response plan right now, right? Whether you have a cyber insurance company or you don't. I know with cyber insurance companies, that's one of the things I like about the industry is they have an incident response plan, right? And then they expect you as shareholders or insurance holders to jump through all the hoops. Do you have two-factor authentication? Do you have antivirus, right? Like there's this nice checklist of things that cyber insurance companies do because they want to protect their investment in you as well, right? And these are all of the cybersecurity basics that the FBI really emphasizes. There's no secrets, right? People say, what is like the magic sauce, Elvis? And I was like, the magic sauce is just the cybersecurity basics, but so many companies do not even do two-factor authentication. It's kind of mortifying, right? So number one, have an incident response plan. And the other thing that I would say is, I don't expect the FBI to be your first, second, or even third phone call. we're probably going to be your 15th or 17th phone call. And that's fine, right? Because by the time you call me, I'm going to have questions for you, but I'm also going to be able to help, right? So here are the expectations. When you call the FBI, one of the first things I'm going to ask you is like, can we get a copy of the ransomware letter, right? And we're also going to ask, hey, like, do you have a hash value of the file that was detonated? And then another question we're going to ask you is, can you tell us what variant of ransomware? Earlier on, I mentioned that the FBI, our office investigates 2 variants of ransomware. The way it works in the FBI is different field offices specialize in different variants of ransomware. And the way that comes about is because we can't have 56 field offices investigating every variant. So we end up having 2 to 3 offices specialize in a specific variant, right? So, dark side we have, you guys have all heard of that with Poor Colonial Pipeline, Riot, Conti, all of these different ones. But what we're going to do is, if we have an active investigation on a ransomware variant, we will figure out if we have a key, a decryptor key for that variant of ransomware that we would share with you if we had it. Unfortunately, that's like a 3 or 4% success rate because they're always changing these variants. The other thing that we can share that is very useful for you is we have indicators, right? So if you tell me that you've been hit by Conti ransomware, I will call the field office that's working Conti, and then they will anonymize all of the indicators, all of the emails, all of the IP addresses, all of the domain names that they've collected through their investigation. They're not going to tell us who the victims are, but they can say, hey, Elvis, here are the indicators. You can share this with the company, right? And so then you, the victim company, and the cyber insurance company and the incident response company can know that you've gotten the US government's library of indicators so that you can do threat hunting, right? And so, and the last thing I would say is probably best to have a relationship with your friendly local FBI office before an attack and not on a Friday at 5:30, which is when Jack and I usually get phone calls.
Thank you. So to that last point, Elvis, how do you suggest that they establish a relationship with the FBI? I mean, it's not top of mind for people, right? Hey, let me talk to somebody at FBI. So how do you suggest they do that?
Yeah, so what they can do is they can go to fbi.gov in whatever state they're in, and they can look up, okay, where's the field office? And then they can, the way it works is, if you go to the field office, there's going to be an email for each field office, and you can say, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm the CEO of this company based in Santa Clara, California. I would like to establish a relationship with the cyber squad in that field office. And so what they'll do is then they will send it off to me or one of my supervisors, and then someone will reach out and say, hey, what do I need to do? And I was like, hey, nice to meet you. Here is the phone number. Here's my email. You can include me on your incident response plan so that you don't have to go through the FBI main line. You can call me or you can email me, right? And then we'll get someone to call you back and to help figure out what's going on. So that's very easy. Just go to fbi.gov, figure out, we have 56 field offices spread across the United States. Unfortunately, we are in over 72 countries around the world, except we don't have the same authorities in those countries. If you're in those countries, I would recommend that you establish a relationship with the local field office for the FBI counterpart in that office, just because you want to be on a first name basis with the FBI agent, so that when you pick up the phone, your hair is going to be on fire. You want to already have established trust. You already want to have a good phone number to call or a good email to use. So it's really that easy. It's FBI.gov. For things that you don't think rise to the level of the FBI needing to get involved, you can also submit a complaint via ic3.gov. So for example, the business email compromise, this Nigerian prince really wants to, sell you this, beautiful resort land in Arizona. It's fake. You can just go to ic3.gov, submit a complaint, and then it's good for us because we'll take that information, we'll compare it to our database and see if it's, it can help further an existing investigation or help start a new investigation.
Got it. Thank you. There's the old adage, right? The prevention is better than cure. And we've touched upon some of the things that companies can do. Jack, what are some of the other things that companies, organizations can do to reduce their risk? And specifically, as we kind of think about larger companies, obviously have the wherewithal to have much better cybersecurity, and they're still getting hacked. So what can the SMBs do that doesn't kind of break their bank in just trying to take care of the prevention side of it?
Yeah, I think Elvis alluded to this before. The things that we can do as the business, they're very simple. I call it the cyber hygiene for your business. There are a lot of things that need to be and you could do. But the three most important things that I would suggest, and previously Elvis mentioned incident response plan. If you don't have one, we can help you. We have a template. Basically, incident response plan is what do you need to do once things happen, right? So having a plan prepared, who to contact, what to do with your infrastructure, what processes to trigger. But two other things that we recommend is multi-factor authentication, right? Being able to have multi-factor on business critical system, on our emails, on mission critical stuff, on your financial transactions. That can save a lot of effort. And there are so many multi-factor authentication tools that are out there in the marketplace. We have arrangements with certain cybersecurity suppliers where we can offer discounts, pilots via Cowbell, and any of the insurance companies that offer insurance policies, basic multi-factor authentication, they can help. And the third is backups. In all of these events, as you know, ransom demand is just one expense. In many cases, we have not paid ransom payment to the threat actor, but it has cost a lot of money to both the insured and the insurer because A, loss of revenue as you go through recovering from this event. B, there could be notification expenses as an obligation. There's a crisis management. Some people even have a PR nightmare because of these events. And then you have credit monitoring, identity protection if there are consumers involved. So there is a slew of expenses that are become expensive on top of ransomware. So having a incident response plan, B, multi-factor authentication, but having backup that allows you to restore your data and get back to your business as fast as you can. We call it encrypted and offline backups. So if there is three things that you want to do is incident response plan, MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, and then encrypted backups that are offline, that can get you through 95% of the ransom events and be able to get back very fast. And you don't need to be spending a ton of cybersecurity budget to get those three things done. So those would be the top three I would recommend. How do you prevent from these things happening in the first place?
That's great. Elvis, anything you'd like to add to those three?
Yeah, so Jack stole my thunder, but you could see me nodding vigorously. I completely agree with Jack on all of those. And all of those are very low cost, right? I mean, and so let's hone in on the backup, right? Like if you have good backups, you can tell those ransomware crews to screw you, right? Like, and so let me take it home too. So for backups, this is what I do at home. This is what you should do at your company. I have at least, it's called the 3-2-1 backup best practice. You should have at least 3 backups of your data on 2 separate mediums, right? So what I have is I have a cloud backup on the home computer that we use, and I have an external hard drive, right? You can go to Costco and buy, like 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, 5 terabyte hard drives. And what I do is I have one of my external hard drives connected, right? And, I have antivirus software, and I set it up so that it backs up my data on a weekly basis. And then I have another external hard drive that is offline at all times. So what I do is I alternate, every month I set a reminder for myself. Hey, everything good? Did I get hit by ransomware? No? Okay, so I'm gonna alternate, and I'm gonna, have one backup offline and one backup online. So 3 backups, 2 separate mediums, one of which is offline at all times. Because as Jack mentioned, if you have online backups, the newer variants of ransomware will find your online backups and encrypt those as well, so that you're completely hosed. So I just want to foot stomp everything Jack said. That is my top 3 as well.
Great. And I hadn't thought about that 3-2-1, but makes complete sense when you think about it, right? So that's great advice, Elvis. So we talked about the threat landscape. We've talked about how companies and organizations can prepare and what they can do or should do if they do get attacked. Now let's talk a little bit about once this is kind of over in a sense, and how do companies get back on their feet? How do they get back to doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is serving their customers, making money, whatever that might be? So, Jack, from a cyber insurance standpoint, how can cyber insurance help companies protect and prepare themselves financially from the losses that, as you mentioned, may not just be from a ransomware payment?
Yep. And, I think that's kind of our goal at Cowbell, is to help businesses deliver the intended outcome at the end of the day. This is a business problem. It's a business risk. It's not just a cyber risk. It's to how do we help you go back to doing what you are intended to do, is to serve your customers. And, for us, a cyber insurance policy is one thing, where you would cover a good policy. Would cover first-party expenses, right? Expenses that occurred during the events, like we just been describing for last half an hour. First-party liabilities, things that you would have to, and then there are third-party liabilities, right? It's a good cyber insurance program will help businesses first-party expense, first-party liability, and third-party liabilities, right? And so having a good cyber insurance contract that is clearly worded, robust, but beyond the policy, the cyber insurers are now extending way beyond just the policy. So being able to monitor your infrastructure for vulnerabilities, giving businesses and insights and recommendations on how to improve their cyber posture, being able to provide them tools and discounts and templates and policy documents on how to build your cyber security infrastructure, offering training, cyber awareness training. Many of the attacks happen because of poor cyber hygiene, and the best way to address is cyber security awareness training. So cyber insurer is becoming more of a partner in the business in order to continue to deliver that intended outcome, as opposed to traditional insurance companies who would only call you at the time of renewal, and maybe many times often via the brokers. So I think you got to look at cyber insurance companies not as a vendor, as a supplier, but as a partner in this business. And that relationship, being able to use their tools, their platforms, is very critical. Cyber threat, this is more than one or too many variables, unlike any other commercial insurance product that you may have. Now, 95% of the cyber insurance products are still bought and sold via the brokers. So the best way to get to your cyber insurance provider is get your broker at work, make them work for you. They're your trusted advisors, because during the crisis time, they will be linchpin in trying to navigate and help you navigate through all of this crisis. So brokers should play a big role in your relationship. Anybody who has your business owner's policy, workers' compensation policy, you should also have them look at the cyber insurance policy for you and find the one that does more than just a cyber insurance policy.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
All right, let's start again. Thank you. So at what point does the FBI's work kind of stop, in a sense, as far as it relates to the impacted parties? Right now, obviously, you're still chasing the cyber criminals. I get that part, but where is kind of the cutoff, and what do you recommend companies do post, the immediate threat, if you will?
That's a really good question, Neeraj. So the thing is, right, we typically have active investigations on all of the major ransomware variants. So I want to manage people's expectations. Like you're a victim company, but like for DarkSide, we have 120 victim companies, right? And so like our engagement with the company will probably end after a few months, regular engagement. And the reason for that is like we collect our evidence, we share with you any threat indicators that we have so that you can clean up your network. And then we're gonna continue running our investigation because someone's getting hacked every week. And so and our investigations, these crews, they're in Russia, they're in China, they're overseas. It will take us a while. Like an investigation can run between a year to 3 years on the criminal side. National security investigations just run in perpetuity, right? And so, but in terms of engagement with the company and the FBI, probably a couple of months, right? But, happy to have you check in with us and say, hey, Elvis, thank you for your help. Everything's going fine now. And then, for us, like we may have follow-up questions like, hey, you gave us these logs and like, we just want to make sure what time zone is this in? Like it looks like it's GMT, but maybe it's something else. So there may be a little back and forth, but it's pretty hot and heavy for the couple weeks right after the incident. But then it usually trails off within a couple months. But of course, you already have my phone number, you already have my email. If anything comes up, you can just like reach out and call, or you can just send us an email.
Great. Jack, you had penned a really interesting article in Forbes about what should companies look for when they're shopping for cyber insurance. If you could just share some of the key takeaways from there in terms of, hey, here are the top three, four things that you should absolutely make sure you're aligned on with the insurance company.
Yep. I think, if I had to put them in top three, number one is get a standalone cyber insurance product, right? The days where you would have an endorsement of cyber or data breach on your business owner's policy or another liability policy, it's a lot of non-affirmative or silent cover, if you will. A standalone product is what you need to make sure that claims are paid. You want to buy cyber insurance, so if there is a claim, it will be paid. And so that's one. Number two is make sure you find a partner that is not just selling you a cyber insurance policy. It has to be beyond, it cannot be a relationship that happens at the inception of policy and again at the renewal. You need a interaction throughout. Tools, techniques, insights, recommendations, training, breach coach, a strong panel of claims handling, forensics, data breach counsel, all those things. So A, standalone policy, B, go for a policy that is not just a policy. And third, just the process of obtaining cyber, it used to be very complex and time consuming. The subjective application you have to fill in, the lengthy number of questions that you have to answer that you can't really quantify. Find a partner that has a very streamlined process. Online applications, a smaller number of questions, because you will see that the more threats that occur, traditional carriers not only have a cyber insurance application, they have ransomware supplement. And then there is, if Microsoft Exchange threat is heating up, there is a Microsoft Exchange supplement. Then there is a SolarWinds supplement. Then there's a Kaseya supplement. And so these things are going to keep increasing. So find a partner who is making the process of obtaining cyber easier for you, that's aligned to your business. And so I would just rank those three, 1 to 3, Neeraj: standalone cyber, more than the policy, and a online application process, if you will. There are many others, but those 3 could be defining ones for you to choose who should be your cyber insurance partner going forward.
Great, thank you. And I know that having been in the business, people just go for the lowest cost option, and the first thing that comes along as far as insurance is concerned, like auto insurance or something, and that's not always the smartest choice. We're doing fairly well on time. We have about another 7 or 8 minutes. I don't see any questions in the panel. Jinian, do you have anything on any other platform?
No, Neeraj.
Okay. So since we have a few more minutes, I'd love to hear just in terms of closing thoughts from both of you. Elvis, starting with you in terms of advice that you would want to share that we might not have touched upon, but just kind of bring the whole thing together.
Yeah, so I think both Jack and I have shared. I mean, none of what we're saying is earth-shattering. I wish I could give you the secret sauce, but the secret sauce is all of the prevention, guidance that we've given you. I think one more tool that I can arm you with that is also free, I want to emphasize, is so the FBI also has a nonprofit association. We work with the private sector. It's called InfraGard. It's I'll type it in later, but it's infragard.org. And so what you can do is you can go and join InfraGard. And what that will get you is every month you will be on an email distribution where you will get between 2 to 4 FBI and or FBI DHS joint reports, right? On lots of different things, right? Like we share reports on trends that we're seeing, in the COVID era, right? Like we were seeing lots of PPP fraud, and we were seeing, lots of different types of spoof websites being used. And so we push out those products. It's completely free. You just have to join. The only requirement is that you are an American citizen without a criminal background. That way, because some of the information that we send you is like TLP Amber, some very sensitive information that may be good for your company. We also try to scale it so that there's different sectors, right? And so we will send, financial companies, financial sector reporting. We will send energy company folks, energy company reporting. So it tries to be a little bit more specific, but it's totally free. And then when I hand it over to Jack, I'll just type the URL that you should visit to join.
Great. Jack, last thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Neeraj. I'm very impressed with the PCC's rapid scale and growth in last 4 years, less a number of years, and also the charter and the global reach. So I'm privileged to be part of this conversation, and added to having joined Elvis on this call is also great. Thank you, Elvis, for your thoughts and comments there. I look forward to working with you more closely. My last thoughts on this is, cyber, and I think you alluded to that, Neeraj, before, cyber is a next digital pandemic, if you will, lack of better words. And so with the increasing threat landscape, what has happened is this market today does not have a demand problem. Cyber insurance market, it has a supply problem. And the reason I am even saying that is in a market dynamic like that, the pricing for cyber insurance have gone up significantly, 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%. We're even starting to see 100% increase in cyber insurance premiums lately. And so when you choose your product, right, pricing may not be the one because every cyber insurance policy is going to be expensive. What you were able to get last year and what you would get going forward until the market becomes soft once again. And it has a lot to do with all the way from the value chain, from the insurers to the reinsurers to the retro insurers to the evolving threat landscape. So don't go for a price. The lowest cyber price product is probably not a right fit for you. And that doesn't mean insurance won't offer lower price product. It also, a statement is the pricing is going up for everybody. For every insurance provider has increased the price and rates just to keep up with the amount of losses and increase. So picking up a lowest price cyber product is not a right cyber product. And that would probably the closing remark, Neeraj, that I would have for our friends at PCC. And thank you for having me on this webinar with you.
Thank you, Jack and Elvis. It's been a privilege having you both on. And, I certainly learned a lot more. And Elvis, we really look forward to working with the FBI's, San Francisco branch and certainly, the cyber branch as well. Thanks to all the people who have helped make this webinar possible. Ginia is on here. She's really helping, anchor this all at the back end. And special thanks to all our participants. Local time zone this Saturday morning for you. For some, it might be Saturday night. We do hope you found this webinar useful and a good use of your time. That concludes our session. Thank you again, and have a great rest of the day.